Hello and welcome back, and that is right. Today I want to return to the subject of crowd-funded NAS solutions or servers or just cloud-based systems. Effectively, these are crowd-funded efforts to create new innovative products that help you store your data and access it remotely. And those of you that have followed the channel before will know that we've already talked about Kickstarter in a number of different ways. We're looking at Kickstarter with that Storaxa project, as well as going through a history of Kickstarter NAS projects, as well as detailing a lot of different solutions over the last decade or so, I believe, that have happened over that time to vie for your attention, for your backing, and ultimately to see if new solutions can be reached that challenge the status quo. Now, in this video, as you can see, loads and loads of tabs here. We're going to be going through the history of Indiegogo projects when it comes to NAS and NAS servers, but a few disclaimers straight off the bat. Number one, when it comes to the term NAS, it's quite general. Network attached storage ultimately is an area of storage that you can access locally over the local area network, your LAN, or remotely over the internet. And for this video though, we've had to be a little bit broad for reasons that will become clear later on. And we're effectively referring to anything to do with cloud hosting, anything to do with hosting your own media server. And these are all of the projects that I could find on Indiegogo that covered in that kind of remit there. Very broad as it sounds. The other disclaimer, this is one where I'm going to have to put my hands up a little bit. Unlike Kickstarter, where I've got mixed feelings about it, Indiegogo, I have a lot more solid feelings about it. I do not like Indiegogo, okay? When it comes to crowdfunding, I think of all of the crowdfunding platforms out there, be it for tech or for personal reasons or, you know, for charity reasons and more, I think of all of them, Indiegogo is the shakiest of all of them out there. One of the earliest reasons I have feelings about that, if I pick an arbitrary tab out of all of these, is to do with this two-word description here, flexible goal. And those two words pretty much represent what I don't like about the platform. And it is that a lot of the campaigns that are on this platform, successful and unsuccessful, are locked behind, many of them utilize an option known as flexible funding. What that is say they have a goal of $10,000 and they only raise $8,000, then they can choose, if they wish, to abandon that project and take the money that has been raised and run away with it, if they choose to. Now, that is a huge gross generalization, and a lot of the time, a measure of how successful a campaign is can come down to if they have a goal of $10,000 and they raise $8,000, they could look at that and go, there's clearly a market for this because there is interest here. Maybe we should proceed with it. Or they can go, we've not even hit the target, but we've got $8,000 in the bank. Can we, claim some or all of this and run away with it there? The same goes for a campaign that raises lofty goals that are too big and it raises some small tokenistic amount of money. They could just say, I don't want that, or they can walk away with it, even in the smallest sense. So flexible funding, although there is a place for it, I'm not sure I'm a big fan of it with, when you compare it to, say, Kickstarter, where on Kickstarter it's very much you get the money if you cross your goals, and if you don't cross your goals, you don't get your money. But it's more so than that. When it comes to Indiegogo, again, I know I'm labouring this point somewhat, but another thing I don't like about the platform is the search bar. I don't like the fact that they're very vague about the things you're searching for. The filters are very, very vague. And when you do look at campaign histories and you look at campaigns from other brands and think stuff that's happened in the past, they just repeat things over and over. And there is just a feeling when you're on the website of repetitive design. Something when you're looking at crowdfunding can sometimes make campaigns look bigger than they are. I'm talking about kind of lack of disclosure or smudging things a little bit when it comes to the statistics. When we talk about Kickstarter, has updated tallies on all of the statistics of campaign success, failures, funding, and breaking it down into sub areas. There isn't that information readily available on Indiegogo. Indiegogo does not have its stats publicly accessible, and the stats that are there are very, very vague. And for me, that lack of kind of transparency is why I don't really like this platform. So although in this video I'm going to be talking about some campaigns that were successful, others that weren't, I think I should have just put my hands in the air straight away and say that I am not a fan of this platform personally. But cracking on with, the first thing we should talk about, when campaigns can be successful, man alive, they can get successful. Probably one of the biggest successes that was in my world and sphere there was this one. A disaster-proof NAS. A NAS that you could set on fire. And, if you're in a building that collapses or a building where there's a flood, a NAS where your data will be protected. Now, as you can see here, it raised 16,000 of a flexible goal of £119,000. So you could look at that and go, do you know what? That was hugely unsuccessful. However, it was a great proof of concept there. Why? Because the product we're looking at is the IOSafe. The IOSafe is a device, and now a huge range of devices, some of which we've, used on this channel. We burnt one of their NAS systems here to show in a fire there that the data on board could survive. They've even partnered with Synology for their OS to be used on board. So they're a great example of, proof of concept that they were able to take this knowledge, take that interest, and turn it to something bigger and better there. And if Indiegogo, had more stories like this, I'd feel better about it. But given that Indiegogo allows users to create campaigns based on concepts, whereas, say, Kickstarter needs you to have a prototype, otherwise they will close down your campaign, that is just something about Indiegogo I'll never get behind. Now, moving forward, beyond IOSafe here, something we have talked about on the channel several times, and we do have an upcoming video on those. We can talk about other kind of NAS, remote access data solutions. Next up, we can look at this, the multi-server and automated cyber defense, ultimately a glorified router and NAS system. Again, it looks super dated and old-fashioned. Why is that? Well, when we look at the campaign details, you can see it was 7 years ago, and a lot of these campaigns you're going to find are way in our rear view mirror here. But this is one of the earliest examples, not the earliest I might add, examples of a private server campaign being hosted here. And as you can see, there was lots of updates, 9 updates in the history of its life. Again, not a lot of interest there. One of the main reasons for this lack of interest was that by the time it came out, this wasn't new. If this had come out maybe a decade ago, it would have been seen as something more of an interesting proposition. They spent a lot of time talking about third-party appliances and not the product itself. And the more you talk about stuff like that, the more it just makes users think, well, I could just go full DIY. And that is going to be a recurring theme on some of the solutions we're going to talk about. Ultimately, the MULTI, the multi here, it was not by any means a successful campaign. And just a lot of the feeling generally behind it was, from the little information I could garner online, was all they were doing was sort of dressing up something that already existed in 1 or 2 forms already online there. And even the design of it itself kind of gave way to the system being something that, anyone could botch up themselves. And they didn't really talk enough about the unique software abilities of it, really. So, moving forward, the next up is our first Raspberry Pi based solution here. We saw a lot of these. If you go to Kickstarter, the sheer number of people that want to bang something inside a Raspberry Pi case and turn it into something unique thanks to, open source nature of Linux, there's just loads out. And this was one of the best examples I saw that did actually make it to market here. You can see it's another one 7 years ago, but unlike that previous thing that we were looking at there, this was to bring in something genuinely unique to the market. And as you can see, they did waves of deliveries as well and structured things very well. And as you can see, a lot of people went for the most expensive tier straight away, despite, again, it being more expensive than anything else. They did regular updates throughout the course of the campaign, and the product itself, although very pedestrian by today's standards, was very well detailed, very well thought out. And as you can see, another item you may see at the top there, it wasn't using flexible funding. You can choose whether you want to use that as your opening gambit there on your campaign. And clearly, they've done a lot of work here for this campaign, and it saw fruition to a point now where variations of this product still exist today. So, moving forward, unfortunately, this was to do with that previous campaign. They did end up expanding out into other alternative products within that. And this was the same group, and particularly the same individual, that expanded beyond that. We move forward onto the Firmbox, a NAS and virtualization tool. And as you can see, it raised $1,000, and that's it. It had 10 comments over the course of it raising £1,000, and it said, "We are very sorry, but due to financial and personal reasons, the company was forced to close." And there you go, all the way, everyone wanting their refund, and no one got their refund. So even though that was a great story we just talked about with that Raspberry Pi alternative product there. And of course, the IO Safe, which was, although not a success from what we can see here, ended up being a successful product. And I'm not sure if the people that backed this originally got their product at the end, or the fact that it didn't cross the finish line meant they didn't get it. We'd have to look into that. But nonetheless, the firmware box was just another example of just over £1,000 raised and no one got their money back. So ultimately, this is the danger of Indiegogo. And unfortunately, as you can see, they deleted all of that information. Another thing that I think has changed now in modern Indiegogo, where your initial campaign details you can put up, you can't really modify it that much anymore. Particularly on Kickstarter, but Indiegogo's got more of a flexible position. And as you can see there is zero information presented there. And that money was raised, £1,000 by 14 backers who lost out. Moving forward, the Mocha Chain 5G. Now this is more of a router-based solution, but did open the door to storage as well over M2 NVMe and for USB storage there. And this is one right now, as of a year ago, saw success. It saw rolling out in limited numbers, because again the campaign numbers there raised 60,000, just shy of £60,000, 47,000 target there, and again no flexible funding. Very important if you're looking at making a campaign there on Indiegogo. People are wise to flexible funding now. So again, this was a nice straightforward MOBO here with Incase that worked as a router solution there, and modem managed solution as well for storage. A great little gateway solution, and again, as you can see, lots of technical information. I'm surprised they went with Indiegogo for this campaign and not Kickstarter. Perhaps the margins are bigger, but overall, looking at it with that proof of concept and a design concept there, a very successful campaign overall. Again, I'm linking to all of these campaigns below, and I'm really going to be interested to do some research after this, just where these guys went after this campaign. Because of all of the things I'm going to talk about in today's video, this is the one for me that was by far the best ran campaign there. They updated people regularly, and even when people, even now, who are talking about issues they've met with firmware updates, it is still being addressed all the time. Next up, FoggyMax, the world's first personal Web3 server. And as you can see, it raised 50,000, well over in fact. It covered its target, and again, no flexible funding. Lovely stuff there. But as you can see, it hit prototype. We're still not over the line yet. And if you go to the updates there, you can see the last update was as little as last month. It's still very much in progress, and they're still in communication with their backers. I would say with this solution, this is another one of those ones where it comes down to a very niche marketplace there, because it is more of a general single device, more like a router plus, but with storage capabilities and cloud capabilities built in there. Again, unlike a lot of the Raspberry Pi solutions that were detailed earlier on here from that WITI board there, the Foggy here, I will say, is, I would say, more matured in the current marketplace of security in remote access servers there being built into it. The discussion is wide ranging. If you go on there, people are getting quite detailed responses. These are some of the longest replies I've ever seen on, project owners with their audience in most cases. So this is one I'm going to be keeping an eye on personally, just to see how it pans out, because it is a unique solution of its kind in terms of that Web3 server architecture that they're going for there, but it's where they go after that, when they go outside of Indiegogo, because I think this is going to be a growing market for more of the tech heads. Moving forward, the Monument 2. This is this is probably when we looked at our Kickstarter video when we were looking at simple photo backups. This is a growing market we're seeing for storage backups for photo and video media on phones, as our media gets bigger and bigger on our mobile, your Samsung Galaxies, your iPhones, your Pixels. But at the same time, backing up needs to be as streamlined as possible. And it's very easy to rely on the inclusive cloud subscription you get, but it costs you bunts. Now, I liked the look of this product, and look at how much it raised. £1 million there on a target there of just shy of £750,000. And if we go to the updates there, we can see status report holidays around the corner. They fulfilled. They began shipping way late into 2022, and it did deliver. And if we go to the story, once again, we're seeing a lot more information about the storage, we're seeing a lot more about the software, and once again, it all comes down to how these things are presented in the initial stages in terms of a successful campaign. It doesn't necessarily mean it will be successful, but if you remove flexible funding and you have a detailed campaign start like this, I'm going to take you seriously. And if you go through this campaign, and particularly when you go through the comments about users that were making comparisons to Synology products in those comments, are very deep, compared to other Indiegogo projects, they were very thorough. And overall, if you do want to see how an Indiegogo campaign is done well, this is the one you go to. If there were more like this, I would like this platform a whole lot more. Now, on a similar line, we've got the Cubic. This is another one that raised shy of £1 million, and they were only looking, I say only, they were looking at $350,000 to start with. This went into their own campaign, and they went into quite high-end distribution for this product. And although it's not been retired as a product, they're actually into a new generation of product there. It's seemingly gone very, very well on the software level, and that's something that when it comes to cloud, for many users, once you get over the initial have I got enough data, is very, very important. And if you go through the way it's gone, and again, integration with those third-party and particularly NAS platforms as well, has been really, really intriguing. When we talked about the Synology BeeDrive here on the channel a few weeks ago, we were talking about how that gap in the market of having a nice easy drop of storage, just drag and drop or just drop directly from my phone onto my storage device here for easy access on BeeDrive. This was something that was doing it prior to that, and this approached it as a crowdfunding campaign. The fact that it can be integrated into an existing NAS platform, when you still can't even do that at the time of recording with Synology's BeeDrive on their own platform, makes this stand out for me. It is still really basic storage, appealing towards a more beginner class or noob class of buyer, but it does what it says on the tin and keeps it incredibly simple there. So fair play to them on this. Remember earlier when I said a successful campaign has lots of information at the beginning? It doesn't necessarily guarantee that it will be successful, but at least makes it for a more credible premise. Here is an example of a campaign with a very credible premise as its project beginnings, but with flexible funding that did not cross the line. Now, the media box. Sound familiar, right? Well, when this first rolled out, again about 7 or 8 years ago, this campaign took place. Although I'm not going to say it was rare, it wasn't as commonplace as it is now to get easy Android straight off Amazon or eBay boxes. And at this point, this was, as you might expect, an Android media box with a little bit of storage as well as the ability to add further storage and access your media anywhere in the world. And there is our horrible friend, a flexible funding goal there. And as you can see, of the 30,000 that they said they needed, they raised 2.5, and that money has since disappeared. Now let's really drill down into that, because as I say, it's a relatively detailed campaign here. It talks a little bit about the capabilities, some of the hardware capabilities, breaks it down in, surprisingly good detail with some concept designs there and information on the specification that this was going to run on. However, all of the updates that were rolling out of it were highly textual based with very little in the way of actual details. So what you saw was lots of information about the devices in progress, lots of information about their in customs. They're coming over all of the parts, and I'm going to put the parts together and get them shipped out to you backers. But the reality is, when you go through a lot of the updates, what you see is lots of people saying, yeah, we're seeing your update, where's my stuff? And this is fairly ubiquitous across all of these kind of solutions. I could have added another 10 more Indiegogo projects that are basically Android TV boxes, and they all amount to this. And almost all of them, whether they are from 6-7 years ago like this, or ones within the last 24 months, all come down to it's an Android media box, they're looking for extra money, it's flexible funding, it never hits the goal, and they always walk away with the money. So the media box here represents pretty much all of them in the kind of unsuccessful campaign. Now, sticking around on the subject of media, we can talk about these. Plex media server expansion. That's right. Because Indiegogo doesn't need to actually be based around a physical prototype or proof of concept, the result is you can have campaigns like this. This is someone looking for money to increase their Plex media server. They want to they've got loads of family members and friends accessing their media, and they want to be able to upgrade it. There is no details here on what people get for their money. All they do is they say, I want money. And, you know, that is quite nice of people to do that. You know, £176 was raised by people looking to, you know, support this. Whether it is his friends doing this, I'm not sure. But there's actually quite a lot of Indiegogo campaigns that I could find of people basically going, I want to upgrade my stuff, send me money, which I find quite bizarre, particularly when you go to some of them where they really haven't made much of an effort for the sort of goals that they're looking at. So again, when it comes to campaigns like this, they're just another reason why, you know, go to GoFundMe if you want stuff like this. Don't take it to Indiegogo, because Indiegogo for me is for people who are, you know, looking to invest in a general idea, whereas Kickstarter has a more rigid structure wrapped around it, but it's not GoFundMe. It's not, you know, buy me a new ice cream sort of territory. Which brings us now to the closing stages here of storage servers, remote accessing. So this is hosting. We've got a couple of different options here at different ends of the spectrum. First off, Hedgehog Servers hosting company. They wanted to start a hosting company. They want you to support it. And as you can see, very little information was provided. They're basically saying, we want to set up our own cloud hosting, sort us out with some buns. And again, there was a little bit more information about what your money would do, but not a vast amount. Alternatively, you can look at CloudLocker. CloudLocker raised 52,000 on a goal of 31,000, and even though they're a flexible goal, they're still very much in progress. Even though this was 10 years ago, you can still find them right now on CloudLocker IT. They're still very much integrated into other SaaS services, and fair play to them, despite that flexible funding goal, which I genuinely despise, it worked out well for them as a hosting provider and integrating with others. So this was an example of them actually taking it somewhere, rebranding and just becoming something better. Overall, when it comes to Indiegogo, I'm still never going to recommend it for crowdfunding, both in and outside of data storage there. But there's no denying there have been success stories. There have been cloud and data solutions that have arisen from Indiegogo. Now, next up, I might look at GoFundMe and platforms like that, but for now we're seeing more storage products and storage solutions arriving on Kickstarter, so I may do a follow-up to that. But this has been a history of NAS servers and cloud storage servers and remote data access on Indiegogo, and whether you should give it a punt or not. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this one. If you have, let me know in the comments. I know it's not been the most gripping video here on the channel because it's Indiegogo, let's be honest. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching. Have yourselves a fantastic week, and I'll see you next time.